Hello, and this is the Harpering Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative take about the world around me. Now, this particular episode, Friday, Fun Friday with food. So the country that I'm focusing on is Brazil. And so I am going to center around foods from Brazil that you didn't know were from Brazil. That is, particularly some of the foods are common in America and how that translates to what we think about it. Let's dig in. Okay, also to add on. So, Fridays are, as I mentioned, about food, but it's also a glimpse into the culture and the aspect. And then as I go on, as I mentioned in other previous podcasts, with other topics of all the viewers out there. And I'm starting out with the viewers, that legacy that started out listening to me. And then I appreciate all the new listeners out there. But Fridays are a way to give thanks and say thank you for listening. And so also, I am, think about, and I actually want to do this, go into the aspects of merchandise. And the logo that you all see on my podcast with the sunglasses and everything, and it says Relax Fit, I actually designed that. And so, as I mentioned before, I'm a person that's really, I really, really like visual communication, visual designs. That is really a tier for me as far as creating, doing things. It's up there for me. So, you guys give me feedback about, you'd be greatly appreciated. What your thoughts are about the logo that I created for this podcast. And then if you'd like to see something like that as far as merch or design logo for t-shirts, for hoodies, for caps and so forth, give me your thoughts about that. Either through email, Substack, X, and of course, YouTube. All right, so let's get on to talking about food that you didn't know is from Brazil. So as I mentioned, I mentioned this in another podcast. So it's quite interesting how the aspect of adapting and being welcoming and opening to new cultures and how that transforms the aspect of modern cuisine. And then also from a business point of view, getting to the aspect of exporting and importing and how that gives more diversity to the aspect of what to eat and what's out there in the market. And then also the businesses behind it and how that goes into the aspect of farm to food and then where everything is going from, growing and coming from. And then also the aspects of how food is seen from the origin of where the nation that the food comes from and how that translates into the interpretations and how it's used in, for instance, in America, and then also how that's seen in other countries too, besides from what we're talking about today from Brazil, and how, regionally and globally, how all of these things are thought of. These products, these produce, that is, are thought of. All right, so I'm going to start out with cachaca, that is. It's the representative of Brazil and the distilled spirit category, and is made from sugar cane. So a crop that is vital for Brazil's economy. Like any spirit, there are some cheap throat burning brands at one end of the spectrum to smooth sip-worthy shots at the other. It is most common in Brazil's national drink and can be added to other cocktails too. And that's also quite interesting too, with the aspect of drinks and how you wouldn't think about the origin and the region of where these ideas come from, and how that shapes the aspect of liquor or the aspect of non-alcoholic beverages, and how it gives a different light about how people consume things as far as the aspects of beverages. And then also too, with the ideas of the beverage market, looking into that, it's quite interesting when you get into the ideas of what consumers think of when they think about tropical drinks, and then also along the lines of what type of fruits, from the term I think I'm thinking of is the mixology of it, of how tweaking the simplest things as far as the acidity and the base level of something, how that changes a drink from being just basic, I guess you can say, to something that is exquisite. All right, so let's get into cassava. So cassava is certainly enjoying an elevated status in the world of gluten-free, as the flour can be used in an alternative for those who are sensitive or wish to avoid gluten. Its starch is known worldwide as tapioca, which originally came from the northeast of Brazil before spreading down to the coast and making itself a part of everyday diet. It is cooked as a pancake and can be topped with either sweet or savory items. Yes, and that too, about the aspect of gluten and the aspect of sensitivities to gluten. And I'm accustomed of understanding that a person who has celiac problems, and in the beginning of it, of trying to figure out what to eat and what I could not eat, it was an uphill battle. But again, that aspect of having that mentality, figuring out, and the aspect of making things whole and chaos is really helpful, because I started doing research and trying to decide what kind of products are out there and what's good as far as gluten-free products, and then also on the aspect of just because it's gluten-free or healthy, that in that umbrella of terms of diet food, but not necessarily as restrictions because of allergies or sensitivities and so forth. And then, diet food goes along with that. But learning about how, different spices, and then you get into the aspect, if you want to, learning about different cultures, how they use spices, how they think about spices. And then it gets to a whole, that's what happened with me. But, not everybody's the same, which everybody shouldn't be. But it's just, my point is, it's just a great thing to have that mentality when you're trying to figure out how to sustain your diet when you have issues, when you can't eat predominant food that's out there in the market to consume, to eat. And then it starts to change your aspects too of how you see food and think about food. And then naturally, I think that was already ingrained in my personality. I know that it is, to be more of the culinary spirit of being more elaborated with taking things to the next step and figuring out how to prepare meals for myself. But it's very interesting. It's helpful. It is interesting too, but I don't want to get into the aspect of saying the same thing over and over, being redundant. But I say interesting a lot because it's just, I have so much of an appreciation of how that spark of chain of thoughts come when you're thinking about something and trying to figure out how to get to the next step, how all the thought process of the chain reaction of linking, of thinking about one thing and then it links to another and that and so forth, and you get to the process of discovering new things as far as the aspect of what all these alternatives that can be as far as eating and having healthy alternatives to include in your diet, so you don't feel like you're trapped or there's nothing else you can eat. And then that's also too, when you think about it, good way to solve problems and to move yourself about in life, to say, okay, I know I have this issue, but what is a better alternative to take? What is let's step back and take a minute. I know it's frustrating, but let's take a minute to think about it and see what else is out there. What can I do to help improve the situation? All right, so here we go with Katy Perry, I believe the pronunciation. Forgive me for that. Cheese. And cheese is a big fan of cheese there. And also that too, I remember in the 9th grade, and then it sparked my interest too, to know more about discovered new things about cheese and so forth. So I had a theater arts teacher, and then it was a thing where he didn't really have a class of his own, so we were in another teacher's classroom, and she happened to be an English teacher. And so one day she was eating cheese, and I was like, "Oh, that looks interesting. What kind of cheese is that?" And she said, well, this is I'm trying to think. It was something like a brie-ish type of cheese, but it was on something different than that. And she told me that it was of a required taste. It was more bitter in taste. And so, she warned me, and I said, "Oh yeah, okay, it's a little bit more bitter." But from that, she sparked my thoughts to know about the aspect of cheese, because at that time I didn't know that cheese could have that sort of, I guess you could say more acidity into it. But those are who are more in the know about this, feel free to give me comments about it too. And to go beyond the type of cheese that I knew at that time was just typically, Swiss cheese or cheddar cheese or American cheese, stuff like that. And, that is interesting how that comes to be when you communicate and you're interested and you have a thirstful knowledge for something, how that turns into learning new things. And then it turns into learning different aspects about culture too. This delicious cheese with its creamy texture can be found absolutely everywhere in Brazil. So spread on toast, mixed with chicken, and added to a pizza inside cheese bread. It can be served with prongs and stuffed into pies, rolled up with meat. And it's truly a versatile cheese with a mild taste similar to brie that seems to work with almost anything. This cheese spread can be found outside of Brazil, and it is definitely worth looking for. So the coconut. The coconut is actually a native of Asia, but like the banana, it adapted well to Brazil's climate and soil conditions, allowing it to thrive in turn. Brazil, which is the fourth largest producers of coconuts in the world. In the large international cities, coconuts have more use in oil. So for the aspect for beauty and food or added to cakes, within the coastal cities, it's normal to get a chilled green coconut and drink the milk straight from the nut. All right, so I'm a big fan of coffee there. And, it's quite interesting, too. Here I go saying interesting. So it's unique to say how, it's a better term to say. It's unique to look at the aspect of coffee and how cities and then states within the cities, and the states and the cities within the states, that is, and then going out regionally, and then going out internationally, how coffee is seen. And then throughout the world, coffee has so much influence into the society to where you have connoisseurs of it. You have the aspect of coffee shops, and then how the development of early coffee shops was the aspect of where intellectuals would gather around and talk about things, and then how the aspect of going along the lines of using coffee shops. I'm getting at it realms into the point I'm making, but I don't want to get too far off kill there. But the aspect of tyranny and not going against the monarchy, with how the rise and the aspect of coffee shops in England and the early monarchs and everything, and to the impact of how coffee shops are seen today. And with each of this, of what I just said, it gives that olfactory sort of the olfactory sort of with that psychological sense of connection to memories and feelings, and what evokes a feeling that comes from the coffee bean. And even the aspect of flavor too, how it is unique to each culture, where it's more sweet, and some cultures where it's more savory, robust, and so forth. More, all of these things. It's just fascinating to me. Can't stretch that enough. So Brazilian coffee is famous around the globe, not just for its taste, but for high availability. This is hardly surprising given that Brazil is the largest coffee exporting country in the world, a position it has held for at least 150 years. Coffee in Brazil is mostly found in the southeastern states, such as, for instance, Sao Paulo, and where climate conditions are ideal for it. And from small local shops, Sao Paulo, that is. So from soft local shops to large chains such as Starbucks, many places use and supply Brazilian coffee beans. It is likely that your daily coffee is sourced from Brazil. Limes. Limes thrive in Brazil, making the country the largest supplier of limes by far in national trades and exports, with Mexico and India close behind. Although in the West, limes are generally associated with mojitos or Asian-style cooking, especially Southeast Asia. In Brazil, it is a common accompaniment for fish. It is also the essential ingredient for the classic national drink, and I believe forgive me for this pronunciation of that, caparrira, not quite. Y'all help me out on that with the ones that speak Brazilian, speak this language. And then, it's quite interesting too, because, Spanish speaking terms are not all the same. So, you say I speak Spanish, but that means that's what, the people who are in the know about language and how that works. And then, from different regions, it's not quite the same, so learning Spanish from Mexico is quite different from Spanish in Spain. And then it's quite different from Portuguese, which is the colloquial language of Portuguese, with French and Spanish. Is all of these things are different. So, that's something to also note with the aspect of culture too. So, passion fruit. Passion fruit is a fruit native to the southwestern regions of Brazil. That is a similar, simultaneously sweet and sour. And Brazil is known as often with the basis of creamy mousses. It's added to cake toppings or an alternative to limes and things in this nature. So it's a great ingredient to use instead of limes in cooking too. And it can be added to salsas, salad, desserts, and Asian style food for a slightly different yet delicious taste. The pineapple. One of the best aspects of the Brazilian gastronomy scene is that the country is rich in exotic fruits that can be brought fresh or picked straight off the branch. The pineapple is one of those fruits, and contrary to what many people think, it actually grows from the ground, surrounded by long sword leaf-like leaves and not hanging from trees. Brazil is the second largest pineapple producer in the world after Costa Rica, and contributes to 10% of all the world's pineapples. The soybean. So soybeans are the reason for things such as soy milk, tofu, and soy sauce, and are often used as a meat and dietary substitute. They are also held as one of the most effective forms of agriculture, producing more protein per acre than most other uses of land. Brazil is one of the largest producers and exporters of soybeans in the world, so second only to the United States of America. Now, I would say about soybean, is one of those things that's up for debate for me. So they say that soybean is healthy and it's good, and as far as producing it from our farmer, from the agriculture point of view, that is a surplus. But there is aspects and negative cons to soybeans as far as the aspect of how the body, as far as what the natural nutrients that the body needs, it doesn't help with that, supplementing that. And then if that's all you eat and you're losing a lot of natural supplements that is needed for the body. And it's one of those things to also consider, when you're thinking about the aspect of dietary foods. And then this is something that I ran into too with implementing soy and the early aspects of trying to figure out my dining and my meal plan in the early days of my gluten-free aspects of meals. And it's one of those things that I came across too with understanding, with figuring out the hard way, and then understanding that. And then I had that idea anyway that, it's not good to go against what the body needs as far as resources and nutrients. But it's one of those things that, you gotta understand that too, to everything in moderation, and to have that consideration too. All right, so let me go into talking about the cashew. Cashews included with fruit and are actually included with fruits and nuts most of the time. The cashew fruit looks like a cross between a pear and an apple and is used in Brazil and juices, desserts, cocktails, and preservatives. The taste is unique and the likability tends to be polarized with people either loving it or hating it. The cashew nut is a common ingredient all around the world. Love for its creamy, light taste. Each cashew grows on cashew nut, requiring an extraordinary amount of fruits to be harvested to make one bag of cashew nuts. And this is also interesting too, how the aspect of allergies come about when you think about cashews. Because this is predominantly this is the main allergen, and particularly with children, with child age allergies. And it's one of those things that we're living in a time now, because back in an other job that I had before I met my husband and all of this, and I would hear other people talking about it, and they would say like, it's just odd to me how more and more in the times that we're living in now, you see all the different allergens popping up. And it also brings into mind, from my point of view and then from their point of view, that, it's just odd how more and more people are having all these allergens. And it's something to look at and to think about, the aspect of how food, from where the sources of where it's coming from to the plate, what type of care is being thought of when you are in the process of buying food that's in the market today. And that's something to think about. So, beef. All right, here we go with beef. Wish list. Okay, let me rephrase that again. So the EU produces a significant portion of the world's beef total. So Brazil, I think they're meaning I'm not quite sure what, I guess that's from the European standard, or I'm not quite sure what that means. So the EU produces a significant portion of the world's beef total. Brazil, along with the supplement, more than all the countries in the EU put together. Second only to the U.S. So beef from Brazil is often considered to be very high quality due to its taste and texture. Okay, so this can be held in someone's back garden, or more formally as known as with the Brazilian restaurants that are prevalent, that serve all you can eat on the range of cut meats. The most celebrated cut in Brazil is the pachica, which is tender, juicy, and full of flavor. So, banana. The humble banana is originally a native fruit from Asia, but it adapted well again, with the climate situation of survival with the fruit and soils when it was first introduced around the 16th century. Brazil is one of the largest producers of bananas alongside India and by far the largest consumer of bananas in the world. So plantain grows natively in Brazil and can be cut up and fried as a tasty and healthier alternative to chips. So the black-eyed peas. So this bean, yet it's almost impossible not to think of the famous pop band. It's quite clever how they included that in this article. And of course, this article will be linked for you in this episode. The key ingredient in the fried bean patties. Elsewhere, there are a main part of bean salad, vegetarian soups, and can be used as an interesting and tasty alternative to chickpeas when making hummus. They are also linked to considerable health benefits, including being a rich source of fiber. Black turtle beans. This bean is most commonly used around the world in chilies, wraps, and bean salads. In Brazil, it is one of the most commonly used ingredients and an integral part of lunch and dinner. It's soaked for 4 hours before being boiled down with added salt and herbs before being served alongside rice and meat. It is popular on the health scene for being a rich source of protein and fiber as well as a natural way to top up on zinc. The acai berry. The acai berry is a deep purple berry that grows with and free in the heart of the Amazon rainforest. Nutritionists and health gurus across the world proclaim this berry as one of the healthiest due to the apparent antioxidant-rich properties. Yet it has been a staple part of the Brazilian diet for many years. In the north of Brazil, it is often eaten in its raw form, which is bitter. In Rio de Janeiro, though it is mixed with ice and strawberries and served as a kind of sherbet, which is how it is more commonly eaten throughout the world. All right, so this reaches the end of the Harboring Light. Tune in, turn up, and absolutely take care out there. Bye-bye now.